The Montana sky stretched endless and blue above Highway 87, the kind of open expanse that made a man feel both free and insignificant all at once. Dust devils danced across the flat plains, spinning themselves into brief existence before dissolving back into the hot summer air. The temperature gauge on Marcus Reaper Donovan's Harley-Davidson read 94 degrees, and he could feel every bit of it through his worn leather jacket. Before we dive into this incredible story, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You won't believe where this journey takes us. Marcus had been riding for 6 hours straight, his back aching, his throat dry as sandpaper. At 47 years old, he wasn't the young road warrior he'd once been, though he'd never admit it to the brothers back at the ironclad Devils Clubhouse in Billings. The chapter vice president didn't get to complain about age. He just had to keep proving he still had what it took. His destination was another 3 hours north, a funeral for an old friend who'd finally lost his battle with the cancer that had been eating him alive for 2 years. Tommy Wrench Morrison had been one of the original founders of their chapter, a man who'd taught Marcus everything about motorcycles, loyalty, and what it meant to wear the patch on your back. The least Marcus could do was show up to say goodbye. The gas station appeared like a mirage in the distance, its faded red and white sign barely visible against the glare of the afternoon sun. Carson's Corner, population 340, according to the weathered welcome sign he'd passed a mile back. It was one of those towns that existed purely because someone had decided to build something at a crossroads decades ago, and through sheer stubbornness, it had refused to die completely. Marcus pulled into the station, the rumble of his engine echoing off the single-pump setup and the attached convenience store that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1985. The building's white paint was peeling, revealing the gray wood beneath like bones showing through old skin. A rusted Coca-Cola machine sat beside the door, and he wondered if it still worked or if it was just decoration now, a relic from a better time. He killed the engine, the sudden silence almost oppressive after hours of mechanical thunder. His legs protested as he swung them off the bike, and he allowed himself a quiet groan that no one could hear. The leather of his vest, adorned with patches that told the story of 23 years in the club, creaked as he stretched. The heat hit him like a physical wall when he removed his helmet. Sweat immediately beaded on his forehead, running down the scar that bisected his left eyebrow, a souvenir from a bar fight in Reno that he barely remembered. His dark hair, streaked with gray at the temples, was plastered to his scalp. He ran a hand through it, grimacing at the grease and sweat. Marcus had the kind of face that made mothers pull their children closer in grocery stores. A heavy brow, a nose that had been broken at least 3 times, a jaw that looked like it was carved from granite, and eyes the color of storm clouds that seemed to see through whatever bullshit you were trying to sell. Tattoos crawled up his neck, intricate designs that told stories in ink, a skull wreathed in flames, the names of fallen brothers, dates that meant something to him and no one else. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd lived hard, fought harder, and carried the weight of choices he couldn't take back. As he approached the pump, he noticed the girl. She was sitting on the curb beside the store entrance, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with tangled blonde hair that hung past her shoulders in desperate need of a brush. She wore a faded purple t-shirt with a unicorn on it, the image cracked and peeling, and denim shorts that had been mended so many times they were more patched than original fabric. Her sneakers were too small, her toes pressed against the worn canvas. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Brown eyes, enormous in her thin face, watching him with an intensity that seemed wrong for a child that age. There was no innocence in those eyes, no childish curiosity. Instead, they held the wary assessment of someone who'd learned to read danger, to calculate risks, to survive. She didn't look away when their eyes met. Most kids would have. Most adults did. Marcus forced his gaze back to the pump, feeding his credit card into the ancient reader and hoping it would work. The machine wheezed and clicked, and for a moment he thought he'd have to go inside and pay cash, but then it beeped its approval and told him to begin fueling. He unscrewed his gas cap and began pumping, trying to ignore the prickling sensation at the back of his neck that told him he was being watched. The girl hadn't moved, hadn't blinked, just sat there on that curb, staring at him like he was the answer to a question she hadn't yet asked. The pump clicked off at $34.67. Marcus replaced the nozzle, screwed his gas cap back on, and told himself to get back on the bike and ride away. Whatever was going on with that kid wasn't his business. He had a funeral to get to, brothers expecting him, and a long road still ahead. But something made him pause. Maybe it was the way she sat so still, like she was afraid to move. Maybe it was the bruise he'd noticed on her left arm, yellowing and green around the edges, old enough to be healing, but fresh enough to be recent. Or maybe it was the simple fact that in all his years of riding through forgotten towns on forgotten highways, he'd never seen a kid look quite so alone while sitting 15 feet from other human beings. The convenience store door opened, and a heavy-set woman in her 50s emerged, her face pinched with the perpetual suspicion of someone who'd been disappointed by life too many times. She noticed Marcus, and her expression immediately soured. Her eyes went to his vest, to the patches, to the bike, making calculations and coming to conclusions. "We don't want no trouble here," she called out, her voice sharp as broken glass. Marcus turned slowly, keeping his hands visible, his posture non-threatening. It was a dance he'd done 1,000 times. "Not here to cause any, ma'am. Just getting gas." "Well, get it and move along. This is a family town." Marcus wanted to point out that he hadn't done anything except exist in her line of sight, but experience had taught him that arguing with people who'd already made up their minds was like pissing into the wind. You just ended up wet and frustrated. "Yes, ma'am," he said, turning back toward his bike. That's when the girl stood up. She moved quickly, with the desperate determination of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Before Marcus could register what was happening, she was standing directly in front of him, her small hand reaching out to grab the sleeve of his leather jacket. "Please," she said, her voice quiet but urgent. "Please don't leave yet." Marcus froze. Up close, he could see more details that made his stomach clench. The bruise on her arm wasn't the only one. There were marks around her wrist, like someone had grabbed her too hard. A healing cut on her lower lip. Shadows under her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. "Sweetheart, my daddy's coming back soon," she interrupted, the words tumbling out fast, rehearsed, like she'd been practicing what to say. "He just want to get something from town. He told me to wait right here. But I don't. I don't want to wait alone. Could you please just stay? Just until he gets back? Please." The woman from the store was hurrying over now, her face red with indignation. "Emma Grace Harrison, you get away from that man right this instant. Your daddy told you to wait, not go bothering strangers." The girl, Emma, tightened her grip on Marcus's sleeve. "Please," she whispered, so quiet only he could hear. "Please don't go." Marcus looked down at her, at those ancient eyes and that young face, and felt something shift in his chest. Something old and rusted that he thought had broken years ago. In that moment, looking at Emma Grace Harrison, he saw himself at 7 years old, small and scared and desperately hoping that someone, anyone, would notice that something was wrong. The woman reached them, grabbing Emma's other arm and yanking her backward. "I am so sorry, sir. This child has no manners, bothering you like this. Emma, what did I tell you about talking to strangers?" But Emma wasn't looking at the woman. She was looking at Marcus, and in her eyes, he saw something he recognized all too well. Fear. Not fear of him. Fear of being left alone. Fear of what happened when the sun went down and there was no one watching. Fear of the person who was supposed to protect you being the very person you needed protection from. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "It's no bother," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I was planning to take a break anyway. Long ride. Could use something cold to drink and maybe stretch my legs for a bit." The woman blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "Oh, well, I suppose the store's open if you want to buy something." "Appreciate it," Marcus said, then looked down at Emma. "Is it okay if I wait with you, kid? Keep you company until your dad gets back." The relief that flooded Emma's face was so intense, it was almost painful to see. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, please." The woman looked between them, suspicion warring with the ingrained politeness of small-town hospitality. Finally, she huffed. Suit yourself. But Emma, you stay right where people can see you, you understand? Yes, Mrs. Patterson, Emma said obediently. Mrs. Patterson shot Marcus one more warning look before heading back into the store, the bell above the door jangling as she disappeared inside. Marcus walked over to the curb and lowered himself down, his knees popping in protest. Emma sat beside him, careful to maintain a small distance, but close enough that he could smell the strawberry shampoo in her hair mixed with the dust and sweat of a summer afternoon. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. A truck rumbled past on the highway, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. The sun beat down relentlessly, turning the asphalt into a shimmering sea of heat. Finally, Marcus spoke. My name's Marcus. I know, Emma said quietly. I heard Mrs. Patterson call you that biker when you drove up. She was on the phone. She said, there's a biker here and he looks like trouble. Despite everything, Marcus almost smiled. Yeah, I get that a lot. Are you trouble? Emma asked, turning to look at him directly. Marcus considered the question. Depends on who you ask, he said honestly. I've done things I'm not proud of. Hurt people who probably deserved it, and some who didn't. Made mistakes. Big ones. But I'm trying to be better than I was. Emma seemed to think about this. My daddy says he's trying to be better too. But he still does bad things. And there it was. The truth, spoken with the simple honesty of a child who didn't know how to lie about the things that hurt. Marcus turned to face her fully. Emma, is your daddy, does he hurt you? Emma's face closed off instantly, the walls slamming down so fast Marcus could almost hear them. My daddy loves me. He gets sad sometimes. And when he's sad, he drinks. And when he drinks, he gets angry. But it's okay. It's my fault anyway. I make him angry. No, Marcus said, his voice harder than he intended. He softened it immediately when Emma flinched. No, sweetheart. That's not how it works. If someone hurts you, that's never your fault. Never. No matter what they tell you. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back fiercely. You don't understand. He needs me. After Mama left, I'm all he has. If I left too, he'd be all alone. And besides, where would I go? Marcus felt his hands curl into fists. He forced them open, taking a slow breath. Where is your daddy now, Emma? He went to see Mr. Kirby in town. Mr. Kirby runs the bar. Daddy owes him money. Daddy always owes people money. She picked at a loose thread on her shorts. He told me to wait here because Mr. Kirby doesn't like kids in the bar. He said he'd be back in an hour. But that was... She squinted at the sun. I think that was maybe 3 hours ago. Or 4. I'm not sure. You've been sitting here alone for 3 or 4 hours? Emma nodded. Mrs. Patterson gave me a bottle of water, and she let me use the bathroom. But she said I couldn't come inside to wait because I didn't have any money to buy anything, and her store isn't a babysitting service. Marcus felt anger burning in his chest, hot and righteous. Not at the girl, not even entirely at the father he hadn't met yet, but at the system, the town, the world that could let a child sit alone for hours in the heat, bruised and scared, and have everyone just walk past like it was normal. Well, he said, making his voice gentle, I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere until your daddy comes back. That's a promise. Emma looked at him, really looked at him, searching his face for the lie, for the catch. When she didn't find one, her lower lip trembled. Thank you, she whispered. They sat in silence for a while longer, and Marcus found himself studying the town around them. Carson's Corner was dying. You could see it in every detail. The boarded-up stores across the street, the faded advertisements painted on brick walls, the general air of decay that clung to everything. This was one of those places that had been left behind when the world moved on, where the young people fled as soon as they could, and the old people stayed because they had nowhere else to go. Do you want to hear a story? Marcus asked suddenly. Emma looked up at him, surprised. What kind of story? A true one. About a kid who wasn't so different from you. Okay, Emma said, shifting to face him more fully. Marcus stared out at the highway, at the endless ribbon of asphalt that had been his home for more than half his life. When I was about your age, maybe a little older, I lived with my old man in a trailer park in Nevada. My mom had taken off a couple years before. Couldn't handle my dad's drinking, his temper. Can't say I blame her, but she left me behind when she went. Emma nodded, understanding in her eyes. My dad was a mean drunk. Not all the time, but enough. When he was sober, he was okay. He'd try. Tell me he was sorry, that he'd do better. And for a few days, maybe a week, he would. But then something would happen. He'd lose a job, or run out of money, or just get that look in his eyes that meant the demons were back. And then the bottles would come out, and Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. Things would get bad. Did he hit you? Emma asked quietly. Yeah, he did. Sometimes with his fists, sometimes with his belt, once with an extension cord that left scars I've still got. Marcus pulled up his sleeve, showing her the faint white lines that crisscrossed his forearm. I thought it was my fault too. Thought if I was just better, quieter, smarter, if I didn't make him angry, then maybe he'd stop. But that's not how it works, Emma. People who hurt kids, they don't do it because the kid deserves it. They do it because something's broken inside them, and they don't know how to fix it. What happened? Emma asked. Did you run away? Eventually. When I was 16, I hit him back. Put him through a coffee table. Then I grabbed what I could carry and I walked out. Haven't seen him since. Marcus turned to look at her. But you know what I wish? I wish I'd told someone sooner. I wish I'd asked for help before it got that bad. Because there were people who could have helped me. Teachers, counselors, police. I just didn't know how to ask. Or I was too scared of what might happen if I did. Emma was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was so small Marcus had to lean in to hear her. I'm scared too. I know you are, sweetheart. And that's okay. Being scared is normal. But you know what takes real courage? Asking for help when you need it. Like you did when you asked me to stay. But you're just staying until Daddy gets back, Emma said. Then you'll leave. And everything will go back to how it was. Marcus shook his head slowly. Maybe. Maybe not. Sometimes all it takes is one person who cares to change everything. And Emma? I care. I don't know you, and you don't know me, but I care about what happens to you. And I promise you, one way or another, I'm going to make sure you're safe. Emma's eyes filled with tears again, and this time she didn't try to stop them. They rolled down her cheeks, leaving clean tracks through the dust on her face. You promise? I promise. And Marcus Donovan, who'd broken plenty of promises in his 47 years, who'd lied and cheated and done things that would send good people running, meant that promise with every fiber of his being. An hour passed, then another. The sun crept lower in the sky, painting the clouds with streaks of orange and red. Marcus bought Emma a sandwich and a bottle of juice from inside the store, enduring Mrs. Patterson's suspicious glares and pointed comments about strange men hanging around children. He bit his tongue, paid for the items, and walked back out. Emma ate slowly, methodically, like she wasn't sure when her next meal might come. It was another detail that Marcus filed away, another piece of evidence in a case that was building itself in his mind. They talked more. Emma told him about school, about her teacher Mrs. Morrison who was nice, but didn't ask too many questions. She told him about her friend Jessica, who lived 3 houses down from their trailer, and how they used to play together until Jessica's mom said Emma couldn't come over anymore. Did she say why? Marcus asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Emma shrugged, trying to look like it didn't bother her. Jessica said her mom said our family was troubled, and she didn't want Jessica getting mixed up in our problems. Whatever that means. It means people would rather pretend problems don't exist than actually help fix them, Marcus said, unable to keep the bitterness out of his voice. Another truck pulled into the gas station, this one dusty and battered, with a camper shell on the back. An older man climbed out, weather-beaten and wearing overalls. He nodded at Marcus, did a double take at Emma sitting on the curb, and headed inside. Marcus checked his phone. 4:30 in the afternoon. He'd been sitting on this curb for 3.5 hours. Tommy's funeral was scheduled for 7 o'clock, 200 miles north. He was going to miss it. The thought sent a pang through his chest, but when he looked at Emma, at the way she sat a little closer to him now, the way she seemed to relax fractionally in his presence, he knew he'd made the right choice. Tommy would understand. Hell, Tommy would probably have done the same thing. The old man came back out with a fountain drink and a lottery ticket. He paused by his truck, looking at them again. Then he walked over. "Evening," he said to Marcus, his voice gravelly with age and cigarettes. "Evening," Marcus replied, keeping his tone neutral. The man looked at Emma. "You okay, little miss?" "I'm fine, Mr. Baker," Emma said. "Just waiting for my daddy." Mr. Baker frowned. "Jack, know you been sitting out here all afternoon?" Emma didn't answer, just looked down at her shoes. Mr. Baker's frown deepened. He looked at Marcus, taking in the leather, the patches, the general aura of danger that Marcus knew he projected. "Who are you?" "Just a traveler passing through," Marcus said. Emma here was waiting alone. Asked if I'd keep her company. Seemed like the decent thing to do. Mr. Baker studied him for a long moment. Marcus could see the calculations happening, the weighing of risks. Finally, the old man grunted. "Jack Harrison's a piece of work. Good on you for staying with his girl. Lord knows that child could use someone watching out for her." "You know him?" Marcus asked carefully. "Known him his whole life. Good kid, once upon a time. Star quarterback, had a scholarship to state. Then his daddy died, his mama got sick, and he stayed here to take care of her instead of going to college. When she passed, something in Jack just broke. Been spiraling ever since. Drinking, gambling, can't keep a job. That poor girl's been raising herself since she was 5 years old." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "Anyone ever call CPS? Police?" Mr. Baker looked uncomfortable. "In a town this small, you don't want to be the one to make waves. Besides, Jack's never done anything you could really prove. He feeds her, keeps a roof over her head. Sure, he's rough with her sometimes, but that's between a father and his daughter, ain't it?" "No," Marcus said flatly. "It's not." Mr. Baker bristled. "Now look here." "I am looking," Marcus interrupted, his voice hard. "I'm looking at a child who's been sitting in 90-degree heat for 4 hours waiting for a father who abandoned her at a gas station. I'm looking at bruises on her arms and fear in her eyes. I'm looking at a whole town that's decided it's easier to look away than to actually help. So no, sir, I don't think what happens behind closed doors is just between a father and his daughter. I think it's everyone's business when a kid's getting hurt." Mr. Baker's face flushed red. "You don't know nothing about this town or these people. You're just some biker passing through, thinking you understand everything after sitting on a curb for a few hours. Well, you don't. Life ain't that simple." "You're right," Marcus said. "I don't know this town, but I know what it looks like when a kid's being abused and everyone's pretending not to notice. And I know I'm not going to be another person who walks away." Mr. Baker opened his mouth to respond, but whatever he was going to say was cut off by the sound of a motorcycle engine in the distance. Not Marcus's bike, something older, rougher. The sound grew louder, and then a beat-up Suzuki turned into the parking lot. Emma stiffened beside Marcus. The man who climbed off the bike was in his mid-30s, though hard living made him look older. Thin to the point of gaunt, with stringy brown hair and hollow eyes. His jeans were stained, his t-shirt torn at the shoulder. He moved with the unsteady gait of someone who'd been drinking, not fall down drunk, but certainly impaired. "Daddy," Emma said, her voice small. Jack Harrison's bloodshot eyes took in the scene. His daughter, the biker, Mr. Baker. His face twisted into something ugly. "What the hell is this?" he slurred, stumbling toward them. "Emma, get over here. Now." Emma stood up, but she didn't move toward her father. She stayed close to Marcus, and that small act of defiance seemed to enrage Jack. "I said get over here," Jack shouted, lunging forward. Marcus rose smoothly to his feet, putting himself between Jack and Emma. He didn't say anything, just stood there, a wall of leather and muscle and contained violence. Jack stopped short, blinking up at Marcus. Up close, the man reeked of whiskey and cigarettes. "Who the fuck are you?" "Someone who was keeping your daughter company while you were off getting drunk," Marcus said calmly. "Emma, did you call someone?" Jack's voice rose higher, panic mixing with anger. "Did you tell someone to come get you?" "I told you. If you ever tell anyone about our business, I swear to God." "I didn't call anyone," Emma cried out. "Daddy, I didn't, I swear. He was just here getting gas, and I asked him to wait with me. That's all." Jack's eyes narrowed. "You talked to a stranger? After everything I've told you about talking to strangers?" You left her alone for 4 hours, Marcus said, his voice dropping lower, taking on an edge that made Jack take a step back. At a gas station, in 90-degree heat. Maybe you should be more worried about what kind of father does that than what kind of stranger keeps a scared kid company. You don't know shit, Jack spat. You don't know what it's like, trying to raise a kid by yourself, bills to pay, people on your back all the time. She's fine. She's always fine. Look at her arms, Marcus said quietly. Jack's face went pale, then red. I don't have to explain myself to you, or anyone else. Emma, get on the bike. We're leaving. Emma didn't move. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Please, she whispered. Please, Daddy, I don't want to go home. Not when you're like this. Jack's hand shot out, grabbing Emma's wrist and yanking her forward. She cried out in pain, and something in Marcus snapped. He moved fast, his hand clamping down on Jack's wrist like a vice. Let her go. Jack tried to pull free, but Marcus's grip was iron. They stood there, locked in place, Marcus towering over the smaller man. I said let her go, Marcus repeated, his voice deadly quiet. Mr. Baker was backing toward his truck, fumbling for his phone. I'm calling the sheriff. Good, Marcus said, not taking his eyes off Jack. You do that. Jack let go of Emma, and Marcus released him. The thin man stumbled backward, cradling his wrist. You assaulted me. You all saw it. He assaulted me. I saw you grab your daughter hard enough to make her cry, Marcus said. And I saw a concerned citizen intervene. That's what I saw. Mrs. Patterson had come out of the store again, along with 2 other people who'd been inside. They stood at the doorway, watching the drama unfold. Emma had retreated to the curb, hugging her knees to her chest, shoulders shaking with sobs. Jack's face twisted with rage and humiliation. You have no right. She's my daughter. Mine. I can raise her however I want. Not if you're hurting her. You can't, a new voice said. Everyone turned. A police cruiser had pulled into the lot, its lights off, but its presence commanding immediate attention. The officer who climbed out was a woman in her 40s, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, her expression professional but not unkind. Deputy Martinez, Mr. Baker said, relief evident in his voice. Thank God you were close by. Deputy Martinez walked over, her hand resting casually on her belt near her service weapon. Got a call about a disturbance. Someone want to tell me what's going on? Jack immediately launched into his version. How he'd left Emma for just a few minutes and come back to find some biker gang member harassing his daughter, threatening him, assaulting him. Deputy Martinez listened without interrupting, her eyes moving from Jack to Marcus to Emma. When Jack finished his rant, she turned to Marcus. That your bike? She asked, nodding toward the Harley. Yes, ma'am. You with a club? Ironclad Devils. Billings chapter. She nodded, processing this information. And you are? Marcus Donovan, Vice President. You want to tell me your side of this story, Mr. Donovan? Marcus did, keeping his voice level and factual. He explained about stopping for gas, about Emma approaching him, about staying at her request, about the hours of waiting, about Jack's arrival and his aggressive behavior toward his daughter. Throughout the telling, Deputy Martinez watched Emma. The girl had gone very still, her face blank, the tears dried on her cheeks. It was a look the deputy recognized, the 1,000-yard stare of a child who'd learned to disappear inside herself when things got bad. When Marcus finished, Deputy Martinez crouched down in front of Emma. Emma, honey, is what this man said true? Did you ask him to stay with you? Emma nodded, not meeting the deputy's eyes. Why didn't you go inside the store to wait? Mrs. Patterson said I couldn't stay inside unless I was buying something, Emma whispered. The deputy glanced at Mrs. Patterson, who had the grace to look embarrassed. Then she turned back to Emma. How long were you waiting out here before Mr. Donovan arrived? I don't know. A while. And your daddy, had he been drinking before he left you here? Emma's eyes darted to her father, fear flickering across her face. Jack took a threatening step forward, but Marcus moved between them again, his mere presence enough to stop Jack in his tracks. It's okay, Emma, Deputy Martinez said gently. You're not going to get in trouble for telling the truth. Was your daddy drinking? Yes, Emma whispered. A lot. He said he had to go see Mr. Kirby about money, and I couldn't come with him because kids aren't allowed in bars. Deputy Martinez stood up, her expression hardening as she turned to Jack. Jack Harrison, you left your 8-year-old daughter at a gas station for 4 hours while you were at a bar. It wasn't 4 hours, Jack protested. It was like an hour, maybe 2, and she was fine. She knows how to wait. She's 8 years old, Jack, not 18, and from what I'm hearing, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. There's nothing wrong with my parenting, Jack said, his voice rising. I feed her, I clothe her, I keep a roof over her head. What more do people want from me? I'm doing the best I can. Your best includes leaving her alone in public places while you drink. Deputy Martinez asked. Your best includes those bruises on her arms. She's clumsy. She falls. Kids get bruises. Those aren't bruises from falling, Mr. Harrison. Those are finger marks. Someone grabbed her. Hard. Jack's face went through several colors. I don't have to stand here and listen to this. I'm taking my daughter and going home. Actually, you're not, Deputy Martinez said. I'm calling Child Protective Services. Emma's going to stay with me until they get here and can do a proper assessment. You can't do that, Jack shouted. You can't just take my kid. I can when I have reasonable cause to believe she's in danger. And right now, Jack, I have more than reasonable cause. I have witnesses. I have physical evidence. And I have a scared little girl who asked a complete stranger to protect her from her own father. Jack turned to run, but Deputy Martinez was faster. Within seconds, she had him cuffed and sitting on the curb, reading him his rights. He was crying now, blubbering apologies and promises to do better, that he loved his daughter, that he just needed one more chance. Emma watched it all with those ancient eyes, and Marcus couldn't tell if the emotion on her face was relief or grief or some complicated mixture of both. Deputy Martinez made several phone calls, her voice low and professional. While she did, Marcus stayed with Emma, who'd gone very quiet. Are they going to take me away? Emma finally asked. They're going to make sure you're safe, Marcus said carefully. Where will I go? I don't know, sweetheart. But anywhere is better than where you've been. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, in a voice so small Marcus almost didn't hear it, will I ever see you again? The question hit him harder than he expected. I don't know, he admitted. But I'll make sure the people who take care of you are good people. I promise. Emma looked up at him, and for the first time since they'd met, she smiled. It was a small, sad smile, but it was genuine. You kept your promise. You stayed until Daddy came back. And I'll keep the rest of my promises too, Marcus said. Deputy Martinez finished her calls and walked over. Emma, honey, I need you to come with me to the station. There's going to be someone from CPS there who wants to talk to you. Make sure you're okay. Is that all right? Emma looked at Marcus. He nodded encouragingly. It's okay. Deputy Martinez is one of the good ones. She's going to take care of you. But what about you? Emma asked. I have to go soon, Marcus said. But before I do, I'm going to give Deputy Martinez my phone number. And I'm going to check in, make sure you're okay. Deal. Emma thought about this, then nodded. She stood up and walked over to Deputy Martinez, who put a gentle hand on her shoulder. As they headed toward the patrol car, Emma turned back. Marcus. Yeah, kid. Thank you for being my knight. Marcus felt something crack in his chest. You're welcome, Emma Grace. You're welcome. The Carson's Corner Sheriff's Department was a small building tucked between the post office and a closed-down hardware store. Inside, the air conditioning fought a losing battle against the Montana heat, and the fluorescent lights flickered with an irregular rhythm that made Marcus's head ache. He sat in the waiting area on a plastic chair that was too small for his frame, watching as Deputy Martinez processed Jack Harrison. The thin man had gone through several emotional stages: anger, bargaining, tears, and now a sullen silence as he sat in handcuffs, his future unraveling before his bloodshot eyes. Marcus hadn't planned to stay. He'd given his statement, provided his contact information, and technically, he was free to go. The funeral was over by now. His brothers would be gathering at Tommy's favorite bar, sharing stories and whiskey, honoring the man who'd meant so much to all of them. Marcus should have been there. Would have been there if not for a little girl with bruises on her arms and fear in her eyes. But he couldn't make himself leave. Not yet. Emma sat in Deputy Martinez's office, a female CPS worker with her. Through the window, Marcus could see the woman talking gently to Emma, taking notes, occasionally offering tissues when Emma's composure cracked. The girl was telling her story, all of it this time, without her father there to silence her with a look or a threat. Marcus's phone buzzed. He pulled it out to find a string of messages from his brothers. Where you at, Reap? Funeral's starting soon. You still coming? Missing Tommy's send-off. Not like you. Call me. Getting worried. Marcus typed out a quick response. Something came up. Emergency stop. I'm okay. Tell Tommy's old lady I'm sorry. I'll visit the grave soon. The response was immediate. Everything all right? Need backup. Marcus smiled despite himself. That was the club. You might ride alone, but you were never truly alone. All good. Just helping a kid in trouble. Long story. I'll fill you in later. Kid in trouble? You going soft on us, old man. Don't make me come back there and kick your ass, prospect. The messages continued, ribbing him good-naturedly, but underlying every joke was genuine concern. That was what the club meant, what it had always meant. Brotherhood. Having someone's back no matter what. It was what had saved Marcus when he was 16 and homeless, what had given him purpose when he had none. The ironclad devils might look like outlaws to people like Mrs. Patterson, but to Marcus, they were family. The door to Deputy Martinez's office opened, and the CPS worker emerged. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and the weary expression of someone who'd seen too much suffering. She spotted Marcus and walked over. Mr. Donovan? I'm Claire Stevens, with Child Protective Services. Deputy Martinez told me you were the one who stayed with Emma at the gas station. Marcus stood, suddenly feeling like he was in school again, being called to the principal's office. Yes, ma'am. I want to thank you for that. A lot of people would have just driven away. Couldn't do that, Marcus said simply. Claire studied him, taking in the leather vest, the tattoos, the rough exterior that marked him as dangerous. But her eyes were shrewd, assessing more than just appearance. Deputy Martinez also told me you made quite an impression on Emma. She keeps asking if you're still here. Is she okay? Physically, she'll be fine. The bruises will heal. Emotionally, Claire sighed. That's going to take time. She's been living in survival mode for so long. She doesn't know how to just be a kid. But she will. With the right support, she will. What happens to her now? Marcus asked. Emergency foster placement tonight. We have a good family in the next county over, experienced with trauma cases. Then we'll start the legal process. Jack Harrison is being charged with child neglect and endangerment. Given his record and today's events, he's unlikely to get custody back anytime soon. Maybe ever. Good, Marcus said, perhaps too forcefully. Claire's lips twitched. Emma asked if she could see you before you leave. Would that be okay? I know you've already done more than enough, but... Of course, Marcus interrupted. Whatever she needs. Claire led him back to the office. Emma was sitting in a large chair, her feet dangling off the ground, clutching a stuffed bear that someone had given her. When she saw Marcus, her face lit up, and she scrambled down from the chair. You're still here, she said, relief flooding her voice. Told you I would be, Marcus said, crouching down to her level. Just wanted to make sure you were okay before I headed out. Emma nodded, hugging the bear tighter. Miss Claire says I'm going to stay with a nice family. They have other kids and a dog. Do you think the dog will like me? I think any dog would be lucky to have you, Marcus said, feeling his throat tighten. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said in a rush, I'm sorry you missed your friend's funeral because of me. Deputy Martinez told me that's where you were going. Marcus shook his head. Don't be sorry. Tommy would have understood. Hell, he probably would have kicked my ass if I'd just driven past you. Was he a good friend? The best. He taught me that being tough doesn't mean being cruel. That real strength is protecting people who need protecting. Marcus smiled. Kind of like what you did today. I didn't do anything, Emma protested. You did everything. You asked for help, Marcus said firmly. That took courage. More courage than most adults have. You saved yourself, Emma. I just helped you along. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I'm scared. What if the new family doesn't like me? What if I mess up and they send me back to Daddy? Marcus took her small hands in his large, scarred ones. Listen to me. You are not going back to your daddy. Not ever. I'm going to make sure of that. And these foster parents, Miss Claire says they're good people. Give them a chance. Let them help you. But I won't see you anymore, Emma whispered. Maybe not every day, Marcus admitted. But I'll check in. I'll call to see how you're doing. And if you ever need anything at all, you tell Miss Claire and she'll tell me. Okay. Emma nodded, but she looked unconvinced. She pulled something from her pocket, a bracelet made of colorful plastic beads strung on elastic. I made this in art class. It's not very good, but... She held it out to him. I want you to have it. So you remember me. Marcus looked at the bracelet, this simple gift from a child who had nothing, and felt something shift in his chest. Carefully, he took the bracelet and slipped it over his wrist. It was too small, barely fitting, the beads stretching the elastic to its limit. It looked ridiculous on his thick, tattooed wrist. It was perfect. I'll wear it every day, he promised. And Emma, I could never forget you. Emma threw her arms around his neck, hugging him tight. Marcus, who wasn't comfortable with physical affection, who'd spent years building walls to keep people out, hugged her back just as tight. Thank you, she whispered into his shoulder. Thank you for seeing me. And that, Marcus realized, was what it came down to. Not the staying, not the confrontation with Jack, but simply the act of seeing. In a world that had taught Emma to be invisible, to take up as little space as possible, he'd looked at her and seen someone worth protecting. When they finally separated, Claire handed Emma a business card. This has my phone number on it. If you ever need to talk, call me, day or night. Emma took the card, studying it like it was precious. Then, to everyone's surprise, she said, I need to tell you something. Something important. Claire and Marcus exchanged glances. Okay, Claire said gently. What is it? Emma's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. It's not just about me. There's someone else who needs help. Someone Daddy hurt even worse than me. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Emma, who are you talking about? Emma looked up at him, those ancient eyes filled with a weight no child should carry. My sister. Her name is Sophie. She's 6. And Daddy took her away 3 months ago. The room went silent. Claire's face had gone pale. Deputy Martinez, who'd been standing in the doorway, stepped inside. Emma, Claire said carefully, I don't have any records of you having a sister. Are you sure? She's my half-sister, Emma explained. Different mom. Sophie's mom was Daddy's girlfriend for a while, but she died last year in a car accident. Daddy took Sophie in because there was no one else. But he was even meaner to her than to me because she wasn't his real daughter. She would cry a lot, and he hated that. Where is Sophie now? Deputy Martinez asked, her hand already moving toward her radio. Emma's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I don't know exactly. Daddy said she was too much trouble, that he couldn't handle both of us. He said he found her a new home with someone who could take better care of her. But, she trailed off, tears streaming down her face. But what, sweetheart? Claire urged. But when he came back without her, he had money. A lot of money. And I heard him on the phone with someone, talking about how the deal was done, and she better be worth what they paid. Emma looked between them desperately. I think he sold her. I think Daddy sold Sophie. The room exploded into action. Deputy Martinez was on her radio, calling for backup, calling the state police, putting out alerts. Claire was on her phone, contacting her supervisor, initiating protocols for missing children. Marcus stood frozen, horror and rage warring inside him. Emma, Deputy Martinez said urgently, do you remember anything else? Any names, any places, anything your daddy said? Emma squeezed her eyes shut, trying to remember. There was a name. Mr. Richmond. Daddy called him Mr. Richmond on the phone. And something about a truck stop near the state line. Daddy made me wait in the car when they met there. It was a big truck stop with a restaurant that had a blue roof. I remember because I was hungry and I wanted to go inside, but Daddy said I had to wait. Deputy Martinez was already pulling up maps on her computer. There are 3 truck stops near the Montana-North Dakota border. One of them, Big Sky Rest Stop, has a blue roof on their restaurant. That's 40 miles from here. Claire knelt in front of Emma. You are so brave for telling us this. So brave. We're going to find your sister. I promise you. But Emma was looking at Marcus. Will you help find her? Please. Sophie doesn't have anyone else. She's just a little kid, and she must be so scared. Marcus didn't hesitate. Yes, whatever it takes, we'll find her. Deputy Martinez looked at him. Mr. Donovan, this is a police matter now. I appreciate what you've done, but I'm not going anywhere, Marcus said flatly. That little girl needs all the help she can get, and I'm offering mine. He can help, Claire interjected. Sometimes in cases like this, having someone outside official channels can be useful. People who won't talk to police might talk to someone else. Deputy Martinez looked like she wanted to argue, but she was pragmatic enough to know Claire was right. Fine, but you follow my lead. This isn't some vigilante operation. We do this by the book. Understood, Marcus said, though his mind was already racing ahead, thinking about resources, about the network of bikers who knew every highway and truck stop in the region, about the underground connections that could uncover information the police might miss. Emma was taken to the foster family's home, Claire going with her to ease the transition. Before she left, Emma hugged Marcus one more time. Find her, she whispered. Please find Sophie. I will, Marcus promised. I swear to you, Emma Grace, I will. As the door closed behind them, Marcus pulled out his phone. He had calls to make, brothers to rally, and a little girl to find. The funeral in Billings seemed like it had happened in another lifetime. The man he'd been when he stopped at that gas station, just looking for a quick break on a long ride, was gone. In his place stood someone with a purpose, a mission, a sacred oath to fulfill. He dialed the number for the ironclad Devil's Clubhouse. It rang twice before someone picked up. Reaper, came the gruff voice of Axel, the chapter president. Where the hell have you been? We've been worried sick. Ax, I need the brothers. All of them. And I need them now. There was a pause. Then, what's going on? Marcus looked at the bracelet on his wrist, at the colorful beads that represented everything good and innocent in a world that too often crushed such things. I need help finding a missing kid. A 6-year-old girl who might have been trafficked. And I'm not stopping until we bring her home. Another pause, longer this time. Then Axel's voice came back, hard and determined. Tell me everything. The brothers are rolling out in 20 minutes. And Marcus did, the words pouring out of him. The story of Emma. The monster of a father. The sister who'd been sold like property. As he spoke, he could hear movement in the background, the sound of engines starting, of brothers being called to action. Because this was what the club was really about. Not the parties, or the reputation, or the freedom of the open road. It was about standing up when others sat down. Fighting when others ran away. Protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Tommy would have approved. The parking lot of the Carson's Corner Sheriff's Department transformed into something extraordinary as the sun set behind the Montana mountains. One by one, then in groups, motorcycles rolled in. The thunder of their engines echoed off the buildings, a declaration that reverberated through the small town. The ironclad devils had come in force. Axel Mad Dog Curtis arrived first, leading a pack of 15 riders from the Billings chapter. He was a wall of a man in his late 50s, with iron-gray hair worn long and a beard that reached his chest. Scars crisscrossed his forearms, each one telling a story of fights won and battles survived. He'd founded the Ironclad Devils 30 years ago with 3 brothers and a dream of creating something that mattered. Now the club had chapters across Montana, Wyoming, and the Dakotas, and every member knew that Axel's word was law. He dismounted his bike, a massive road king that gleamed even in the fading light, and walked straight to Marcus. They clasped forearms in the traditional greeting, and Axel's steel-blue eyes searched Marcus's face. You look like hell, brother. Feel worse, Marcus admitted. Thanks for coming. You said a kid was in trouble. That's all we needed to hear. Axel glanced at the sheriff's department. What's the situation? Marcus briefed him quickly, laying out everything he knew about Sophie, about Jack Harrison, about the truck stop with the blue roof. As he spoke, more bikes arrived. 20, 30, 40. Brothers from chapters Marcus hadn't seen in years made the ride when the call went out. Deputy Martinez emerged from the building, her eyes widening as she took in the growing assembly of bikers. Mr. Donovan, what is this? These are my brothers, Marcus said simply. They're here to help. "This is a police investigation," she protested. "I can't have a motorcycle club running rush-hour over." "We're not going to interfere with your investigation," Axel interrupted, his voice respectful but firm. "But we have resources you don't. Eyes and ears in places police can't reach. Information networks that span 3 states. If that little girl is out there, we can help find her." Deputy Martinez looked overwhelmed. Then her radio crackled, and she stepped aside to take the call. When she came back, her face was grim. "That was my captain. We've confirmed that Jack Harrison made large cash deposits 3 months ago, totaling $15,000. He told his bank it was from selling a car, but we can't find any record of such a sale." "Payment for Sophie," Marcus said, his voice flat. "Looks that way. We've also run the name Mr. Richmond. There's a Gregory Richmond with a record for possession of child pornography, served 2 years, released 18 months ago. Last known address is in Fargo, North Dakota. But when we sent officers to check, the apartment was empty. Landlord says he moved out 3 weeks ago. No forwarding address." Axel pulled out his phone. "Let me make some calls. We have brothers in Fargo. If Richmond was living there, someone in the community saw something, knows something." Deputy Martinez hesitated, clearly torn between protocol and desperation. Finally, she nodded. "But anything you find, you bring to me first. No taking matters into your own hands. This has to be done legally, or any case we build will fall apart in court." "Understood," Axel said. The next 2 hours were a masterclass in organized coordination. The parking lot became an impromptu war room, with bikers hunched over phones and laptops, calling in favors, accessing information, building a picture of where Sophie might be. A brother named Snake, who worked as a long-haul trucker during the off-season, knew every truck stop between Montana and the Dakotas. He pulled up logs and receipts, trying to narrow down which specific truck stop Emma had described. "Big Sky Rest Stop fits," he said, pointing at a map on someone's tablet. "Blue roof, big enough to have parking for the kind of RVs that could be mobile operations for trafficking. And it's right on the border, perfect for quick transfers." Another brother, Torch, had contacts with a network of former law enforcement who'd retired but kept their ears to the ground. He was on the phone now, voice low and urgent, gathering intelligence about child trafficking operations in the region. Marcus paced, the bracelet on his wrist catching his eye with every movement. Emma's gift, a reminder of why they were doing this. Every minute that passed was another minute Sophie spent in whatever hell she'd been sold into. His phone rang. Claire Stevens, the CPS worker. "Mr. Donovan, I wanted to let you know Emma is settling in with the Johnsons. They're good people. She's safe." "Good," Marcus said. "That's good. She keeps asking about Sophie. About whether we've found her yet." "We're working on it," Marcus said. Tell her the Knights are gathering. She'll understand." Claire was quiet for a moment. "You know, in my 20 years doing this job, I've seen a lot of people claim they care. But you actually do. That little girl is lucky you stopped at that gas station." "I'm lucky she asked for help," Marcus corrected. "She reminded me why any of this matters." After hanging up, Marcus found Axel talking with Deputy Martinez and 2 state police officers who'd arrived to coordinate the search. One of them, a hard-faced man named Captain Reynolds, was looking at the assembled bikers with barely concealed distrust. "I understand you have information networks," Reynolds was saying, "but I can't have civilians." "With all due respect, Captain," Axel interrupted, "we're not civilians. We're concerned citizens who happen to have access to information you need. Now you can work with us, or you can waste time trying to shut us down while a 6-year-old girl stays missing. Your choice." Reynolds' jaw tightened, but before he could respond, a young biker burst through the group, phone in hand. "We got something," he said urgently. "Marco, one of our brothers in Bismarck, knows a bartender who works near the trucking district. She says she overheard guys talking about a shipment going through last month. Young girl, blonde, about 6 years old. They were laughing about how easy it was, how the father was so desperate for drug money he practically handed her over." Deputy Martinez went pale. "Did she see who these men were?" "One of them was a regular. Guy named Dutch. She doesn't know his last name, but she says he drives for a private transport company. Custom Haul Incorporated. They do specialty cargo, mostly legal stuff, but rumors say they'll transport anything if the price is right. Captain Reynolds was already on his phone, barking orders. I want everything on Custom Haul Incorporated company records, employee lists, vehicle registrations. I want to know everywhere they've been in the last 3 months. The investigation kicked into high gear. More information came in, pieces of a puzzle slowly forming a picture. Custom Haul Incorporated was a shell corporation owned by Gregory Richmond. Dutch's real name was Carl Reinhardt, an ex-con with a record for smuggling. They had 3 regular routes, and one of them went through a small town in South Dakota called Millerville. I know Millerville, Snake said. There's an old motel there, the Sunset Inn. Used to be a decent place, but it's gone downhill in recent years. Word is the owner rents rooms by the week, no questions asked. If you're trying to keep someone hidden, that's where you'd go. Captain Reynolds looked at Deputy Martinez. That's a 5-hour drive. We'll coordinate with South Dakota State Police. Get a team together. We're coming too, Marcus said. Absolutely not. This is a law enforcement operation. Look, Axel said, stepping forward. Those people know a cop when they see one. But a bunch of bikers rolling through? We're just passing through, stopping for gas, maybe causing a little noise. We can scout the location without raising alarms. Give your officers eyes on the ground before they move in. Reynolds looked like he wanted to refuse, but Deputy Martinez touched his arm. He's right, Captain, and we need every advantage we can get. If Sophie is there and we come in too hot, they might run. Or worse. The captain looked between them, clearly struggling with the decision. Finally, he cursed under his breath. Fine, but you follow our protocols. You see anything, you report it immediately. You do not engage. Are we clear? Crystal, Axel said. Within 30 minutes, a convoy was assembled. 20 motorcycles, led by Axel and Marcus, with 3 police vehicles following at a discreet distance. They rode through the night, the headlights cutting through the darkness like knives. Marcus rode at the front, his mind racing faster than the bike beneath him. He thought about Emma, about her courage in speaking up. He thought about Sophie, just 6 years old, torn from everything she knew and sold to monsters. He thought about all the children who suffered in silence because no one was willing to see, to help, to act. The bracelet felt heavy on his wrist, a constant reminder of his promise. They were going to find Sophie, and God help anyone who stood in their way. Millerville, South Dakota appeared as a collection of dim lights in the distance around 2 a.m. The town was small, maybe 1,000 people, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, or at least pretended to. The main street was deserted, just a few streetlights casting pools of yellow light on cracked pavement. The sun set and sat on the edge of town, exactly as Snake had described. It was a 2-story horseshoe-shaped building, its paint faded to a gray that might have once been blue. Half the rooms were dark, but lights glowed behind curtains in several others. A flickering neon sign announced vacancy, the letters buzzing like dying insects. The convoy parked a quarter-mile away, bikes rolling to a stop in the parking lot of an abandoned gas station. The police vehicles pulled in behind them, and Captain Reynolds climbed out, already on his radio coordinating with local law enforcement. Axel gathered the brothers into a tight circle. Here's how this plays out, he said, his voice low. Snake and I are going to ride past the motel, maybe stop at the office like we're looking for a room. Get eyes on the place, see who's there, which rooms are occupied. The rest of you stay here, keep your engines quiet. We don't want to spook anyone. Marcus started to object, wanting to be the one to scout, but Axel cut him off with a look. You're too close to this, brother. You need to stay here and keep a clear head. Marcus knew Axel was right, but it didn't make waiting any easier. He watched as Axel and Snake rode off, their bikes rumbling softly through the night. The rest of the brothers waited in tense silence. Deputy Martinez stood nearby, arms crossed, scanning the darkness. I've called for backup from the county sheriff's department and South Dakota State Police. They're 20 minutes out. That might be too long, Marcus said. If whoever's in there realizes something's up, they could run. Or they could hurt that child, Martinez countered. We have to be smart about this. 10 minutes crawled by. 15. Then Axel's voice crackled over the walkie-talkie they distributed among the group. "We've got activity. Room 12, second floor. Two males visible through the window. One matches the description of Carl Reinhardt. The other is unknown. They're packing bags. Looks like they're getting ready to move." Captain Reynolds swore. "They're running. Someone must have tipped them off." "There's more," Axel's voice continued. Snake got a look through a gap in the curtain. "There's a child in the room. Small, blonde, approximately 6 years old. She matches the description of Sophie Harrison." Marcus's heart slammed against his ribs. "We have to move now." "State police aren't here yet," Reynolds protested. "We need. By the time they arrive, those men and that child will be gone," Marcus interrupted. "We know she's there. We know who's with her. What more do you need?" Martinez looked at Reynolds, then at Marcus, then back at Reynolds. "He's right, Captain. We have probable cause. We have exigent circumstances. We can't let them leave with that child." Reynolds's face was tight with the weight of the decision. Finally, he nodded. "All right. We move in fast and hard. Martinez, you and I will take the front entrance. Donovan, your people cover the back exits. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. We need these men alive to testify." The group moved into position. Marcus led a team of 10 bikers around the back of the motel, moving quietly despite their size. They spread out, covering every exit and stairwell. Through the walkie-talkie, Marcus heard Captain Reynolds's voice. "State police are 5 minutes out. We wait for them." But even as he said it, the door to room 12 burst open. 2 men emerged, one carrying duffel bags, the other dragging a small figure wrapped in a blanket. The child was struggling, trying to scream, but a hand was clamped over her mouth. "They're moving." Axel's voice crackled. "East stairwell, heading to the parking lot." Marcus ran, his boots pounding on asphalt. He rounded the corner just as the men reached a black panel van parked in the shadows. One of them, tall and heavily built with a shaved head, had already thrown the child into the back. He was climbing in after her when he saw Marcus and the other bikers converging on his position. "Shit," the man yelled. "Go, go, go." The driver, lean and wiry with a face full of tattoos, jumped behind the wheel. The engine roared to life. Marcus didn't think. He just reacted. As the van began to move, he sprinted forward and threw himself at the back door, grabbing the handle just as it swung closed. The van lurched forward, dragging him along as he held on with one hand and grabbed the door frame with the other. Inside, he could see the child, Sophie, curled in the corner, her eyes wide with terror. The big man was reaching for her, and the sight of it filled Marcus with a rage he'd never felt before. With a roar of pure fury, Marcus hauled himself up and into the moving van. He crashed into the big man, both of them tumbling across the metal floor. Fists flew. The man was strong, trained, but Marcus fought with the desperation of someone who'd made a promise to a little girl and would die before breaking it. Outside, the other bikers gave chase on their motorcycles, surrounding the van as it tried to speed away. The driver swerved, trying to shake them off, but there were too many. Then Captain Reynolds's patrol car came screaming around the corner, lights flashing, siren wailing. The van driver panicked and slammed on the brakes. The sudden stop sent Marcus and the big man tumbling forward, crashing into the back of the driver's seat. The driver's door flew open and the wiry man tried to run, but Axel was there. One solid punch to the jaw, and the man crumpled. Marcus and the big man were still fighting, rolling across the van floor. The man's hand found a knife strapped to his belt. He pulled it, slashing at Marcus's face. Marcus jerked back, feeling the blade whistle past his cheek, so close he felt the air move. "You're dead," the man screamed, lunging forward with the knife. Marcus caught the man's wrist, stopping the blade inches from his throat. They strained against each other, both men grunting with effort. Then Marcus heard a small voice. "Stop hurting him." Sophie had crawled forward and was hitting the big man's leg with her small fists, tears streaming down her face. "Stop it. Leave him alone." The distraction was enough. Marcus twisted, using the man's own momentum against him, and slammed the knife hand into the floor of the van. Once, twice, 3 times until the blade clattered away. Then Marcus drove his elbow into the man's face, hearing the satisfying crunch of cartilage breaking. The man went limp. Suddenly, the van was full of police. Captain Reynolds and Deputy Martinez pulled the unconscious man out while other officers secured the driver. Axel appeared at the back door, breathing hard. "Reaper, you okay?" Marcus nodded, unable to speak for a moment. He turned to Sophie, who was pressed against the corner of the van, shaking violently. "Sophie," Marcus said gently, moving slowly so as not to scare her. "Sophie Harrison?" The little girl stared at him with eyes too old for her face, the same ancient awareness he'd seen in Emma's eyes. "Who are you?" she whispered. "My name is Marcus. I'm a friend of your sister's." "Emma? Do you remember Emma?" At the sound of her sister's name, Sophie's face crumpled. "Emmy? You know Emmy." "I do," Marcus said, extending his hand carefully. "She's safe now. She's the one who told us you needed help. She's the one who sent me to find you." Sophie looked at his hand, at the colorful bracelet around his wrist. "Emma made that," she said. "She likes making bracelets. She gave it to me," Marcus said, "as a gift, so I'd remember her while I looked for you." Sophie's lower lip trembled. Then, in a movement that shattered what remained of Marcus's emotional armor, she launched herself forward and wrapped her arms around his neck, sobbing into his shoulder. "I want Emmy," she cried. "I want my sister. I want to go home." Marcus held her, this small, broken child who'd been through hell, and made another promise. "You're going to see Emma again. I swear it. And you're never going to be hurt like this again. Never." Deputy Martinez appeared at the van door, her own eyes bright with tears. "Sophie, honey, I'm Deputy Martinez. We're going to take you somewhere safe now, okay? And tomorrow, we're going to take you to see your sister." Sophie pulled back to look at Marcus. "Promise? Promise I'll see Emmy." "I promise," Marcus said. And for the second time in 24 hours, Marcus Donovan made a vow he would move heaven and earth to keep. The drive back to Montana felt longer than any ride Marcus had ever taken, despite the fact that he wasn't even on his bike. Deputy Martinez had insisted he ride in the police vehicle with Sophie, recognizing that the traumatized child had latched onto him as a source of safety. Sophie sat in the back seat, wrapped in a blanket despite the summer heat, clutching Marcus's hand like a lifeline. She hadn't said much after the initial burst of emotion at the van, just occasional questions about Emma, about whether she was really safe, whether Daddy could find them. "Your father is in jail," Martinez explained gently. "He can't hurt you or Emma anymore." "But he said I was bad," Sophie whispered. "He said that's why my mommy died, because I was bad. He said no one would ever want me." Marcus felt a fresh wave of fury at Jack Harrison, but he kept his voice calm. "Your daddy was wrong, Sophie. Dead wrong. Your mommy dying wasn't your fault. And you're not bad. You're brave and strong, and Emma loves you so much." "Does she hate me?" Sophie asked, her voice small. "For leaving her alone with Daddy?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "She doesn't hate you. She's been worried sick about you. That's why she told us where to look. She wanted us to bring you home." Sophie fell quiet again, processing this information. Through the window, Marcus could see the sunrise beginning to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day, a new beginning. His phone buzzed with a text from Axel. "Brothers are heading back to Billings. You staying with the kid?" Marcus typed back, "Yeah, need to see this through. Tommy would be proud. Hell, we all are. Safe travels, brother." Marcus looked down at the bracelet on his wrist, at Sophie's small hand still gripping his. He thought about Tommy, about the lessons his old friend had taught him about honor, loyalty, and standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. This was Tommy's legacy, more than any funeral could ever be. They arrived at the Carson's Corner Sheriff's Department as the sun fully cleared the horizon. Claire Stevens was already there, having driven through the night after hearing Sophie had been found. She met them in the parking lot, her professional composure cracking when she saw the little girl. "Oh, sweetheart," Claire breathed, tears running down her face. "You're safe. You're really safe." Sophie looked at her warily. "Are you taking me away from Marcus?" "I'm here to make sure you're okay," Claire said gently, "and to take you to see Emma. Would you like that?" Sophie's eyes went wide. Now? I can see her now. The Johnsons are bringing her here. They should arrive in about 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes were the longest of Sophie's young life. She paced, she fidgeted, she asked Marcus 100 times if he was sure Emma was really coming. Claire did a preliminary medical check, documenting the bruises and marks that told a story of months of abuse and neglect. Each new injury added to the case against the men who trafficked her. Carl Reinhardt and his partner, whose name turned out to be Vincent Dutch Mueller, were already in custody, facing charges that would keep them in prison for the rest of their lives. Gregory Richmond had been picked up at a border crossing trying to flee into Canada. The whole trafficking network was unraveling, with arrests being made across 3 states. But Marcus wasn't thinking about the criminals. He was thinking about 2 little girls who'd survived hell and were about to be reunited. When the Johnson family's minivan pulled into the parking lot, Sophie was at the window, her nose pressed against the glass. The van's door slid open, and Emma climbed out. For a moment, the 2 sisters just stared at each other across the parking lot. Then Emma screamed, "Sophie," and ran. Sophie ran to meet her, the blanket falling from her shoulders. They collided in the middle of the lot, wrapping their arms around each other and crying. Marcus watched through the window, his throat tight. Mrs. Johnson, a kind-faced woman in her 40s, approached Claire. "Will Sophie be placed with us too? We have room, and I think separating them again would be cruel." "I'll expedite the paperwork," Claire said. "They've been through enough. They should be together." Eventually, the girls made their way inside, still clinging to each other. When Sophie saw Marcus, she pulled Emma over to him. "This is the night," Sophie told her sister. "The one you sent to find me." Emma looked at Marcus, at the bracelet still on his wrist, and burst into fresh tears. "You found her. You really found her." "Told you I would," Marcus said, his voice rough. Emma threw her arms around him, followed quickly by Sophie. Marcus found himself hugging both girls, these tiny warriors who'd survived so much and still had the courage to trust, to hope, to believe in help when it came from the most unlikely source. "Thank you," Emma whispered. "Thank you for being our knight." Sophie pulled back to look at him seriously. "Are you a real knight? Like in the stories?" Marcus smiled, this broken, scarred man with a violent past and too many regrets to count. "No, sweetheart. I'm not a knight. I'm just a guy who stopped at a gas station and met 2 of the bravest kids in the world." "That sounds like a knight to me," Sophie said. The Johnsons took the girls back to their home with promises to return later in the week for more interviews and paperwork. Claire coordinated with the state to ensure the sisters would stay together throughout the placement process. Jack Harrison would face charges of child abuse, child endangerment, and human trafficking. He would never see his daughters again. As the minivan drove away, Emma and Sophie pressed against the back window, waving at Marcus. He waved back, feeling something in his chest that had been frozen for decades finally crack open. Deputy Martinez stood beside him. "You did a good thing, Mr. Donovan." "No, you did an incredible thing. Those girls are alive and safe because of you." "Because of Emma," Marcus corrected. "She's the one who had the courage to ask for help." "I just answered." "Still," Martinez said, "not many people would have stopped. Even fewer would have stayed. And almost no one would have moved heaven and earth to rescue a child they'd never met. You're a good man, Marcus Donovan." Marcus thought about that. About all the things he'd done in his 47 years, the mistakes, the violence, the choices he couldn't take back. He'd never thought of himself as a good man. But maybe, he considered, maybe good wasn't about your past. Maybe it was about what you did when someone needed you. About the choices you made when it mattered most. "I need to get back on the road," he said finally. "Got a grave to visit in Billings. I owe an old friend an apology for missing his funeral." "I think your friend would understand," Martinez said. "Yeah," Marcus agreed, smiling. "Yeah, he would." He walked to his bike, the morning sun warm on his leather jacket. The ironclad Devils had already headed back to Billings, but he knew they'd be waiting to hear the full story. It would become part of club legend, this tale of a random stop at a gas station that turned into a rescue mission. As Marcus swung his leg over his bike and started the engine, he looked at the bracelet on his wrist one more time. Emma's gift. A reminder that sometimes, In the most unexpected moments, we're given the chance to be someone's hero. All we have to do is say yes. The road back to Billings stretched before Marcus like a ribbon of redemption. He rode slowly, in no hurry now, letting the morning sun warm away the exhaustion of the sleepless night. The events of the past 24 hours played through his mind like a film. Emma's frightened face at the gas station, Sophie's tears in the van, the moment the sisters reunited. He'd left Montana yesterday as a vice president of a motorcycle club, heading to a funeral. He was returning as something else, something more. A man who'd remembered that life was about more than just surviving your past. It was about using that past to help others survive theirs. His phone rang through the bike's Bluetooth system. It was Axel. "Where you at, brother?" The chapter president's voice crackled. "About an hour out. Taking it slow. The brothers are waiting at the clubhouse. News crews too. Stories blown up. National media is calling it the biker who saved two sisters." "You're famous, Reap." Marcus grimaced. "I don't want to be famous. I just want." "I know what you want," Axel interrupted gently. "But you need to understand something. What you did yesterday, it changed things. Not just for those girls, but for how people see us. For how they see the club. Every news story is talking about how a Hell's Angel-style biker risked everything to rescue trafficked children. You gave us something we've been trying to get for 30 years, respect." Marcus thought about that. About all the times people had crossed the street to avoid him, clutched their purses tighter when he walked by, told their children not to stare at the scary man. He'd accepted that judgment as the price of the life he'd chosen. But maybe, just maybe, he could change that narrative. "All right," he said. "I'll talk to the reporters. But only if they understand I'm just one guy. The whole club came together for this. Every brother who dropped what they were doing and rode through the night deserves recognition." "That's my VP," Axel said with pride in his voice. Marcus ended the call and continued riding. But his mind drifted to Tommy again. His old friend and mentor would have loved this story. Tommy had always believed the club could be a force for good, that the brotherhood they'd built could be used to protect and serve, not just themselves but the community around them. "We're not outlaws," Tommy used to say. "We're just men who chose freedom over conformity. And with that freedom comes responsibility, to look out for those who can't look out for themselves." Marcus had heard those words 100 times, but they'd never truly sunk in until yesterday, when a scared little girl grabbed his sleeve and asked him to stay. The Billings clubhouse came into view just after noon. It was a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town, surrounded by motorcycles and pickup trucks. But today, there were also news vans, their satellite dishes pointing skyward like flowers seeking the sun. Marcus parked his bike and removed his helmet. Immediately, reporters surged forward, microphones extended, cameras rolling. "Mr. Donovan, can you tell us about the rescue? Is it true you fought the traffickers hand-to-hand? What made you decide to help Emma Harrison?" Marcus raised his hands, and the crowd quieted. "I'll answer your questions, but first, I need you to understand something. This isn't about me being a hero. This is about two little girls who survived hell and had the courage to ask for help. Emma and Sophie Harrison are the heroes of this story." He told them everything, starting with the gas station, Emma's request, the long wait, the discovery of Sophie's disappearance, the midnight raid. The reporters scribbled frantically, cameras capturing every word. When he finished, a young female reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Donovan, some people are surprised that a motorcycle club got involved in something like this. There's a stereotype that bikers are dangerous, criminal. What would you say to that?" Marcus looked at her directly. "I'd say stereotypes exist because people are lazy. It's easier to judge someone by what they look like than to actually see who they are. Yeah, I've made mistakes. I've got a record. I've done things I'm not proud of. But so have plenty of people in suits and ties who never get looked at sideways." He gestured to the clubhouse behind him. "The men in this club are fathers, brothers, veterans. We're mechanics and truckers and construction workers. We choose to ride motorcycles and wear leather and live outside the normal rules. But that doesn't make us bad people. And when a child needed help, when the system failed and the community looked away, we were the ones who showed up. You can judge us however you want, but the facts speak for themselves." The crowd was silent for a moment. Then another reporter spoke up, an older man with gray hair. What happens next? Will you stay in contact with the girls? That's up to them and their foster family, Marcus said. But yeah, I hope so. Emma gave me this. He held up his wrist, showing the bracelet. It's a reminder that small acts of kindness can change lives. I'm not going to forget that. After the press conference, Marcus finally made it inside the clubhouse. The brothers erupted in cheers, clapping him on the back, offering beers and food. But Marcus just wanted to sit down for a moment, to process everything that had happened. Axel found him on the back patio, staring out at the mountains in the distance. You did good, brother. Tommy would have been proud. I missed his funeral, Marcus said quietly. No, you didn't. You honored him in the best way possible. You lived his philosophy. You protected someone who needed protecting. Axel pulled out a small wooden box. Tommy's daughter asked me to give this to you. Said he'd want you to have it. Marcus opened the box. Inside was Tommy's road patch, the one he'd worn for 30 years. On the back was embroidered, "Protect the innocent." He had this made 5 years ago, Axel explained. Said one day, when he was gone, it would go to whoever truly understood what the club was supposed to be about. His daughter said she knew it was you the moment she heard what you did for those girls. Marcus traced the embroidery with his finger, tears burning behind his eyes. I don't deserve this. That's exactly why you do deserve it, Axel said. Tommy always said the best leaders are the ones who don't want the power. They're the ones who will use it right. Over the next few days, the story continued to grow. News outlets across the country picked it up. Social media exploded with support for the Ironclad Devils. Donations poured into the clubhouse, people wanting to support the biker heroes who'd saved 2 children. But the moment that meant the most to Marcus came 3 days after the rescue. He was at the clubhouse working on a bike when his phone rang. It was Claire Stevens. Mr. Donovan, I'm calling with some news. The Johnsons have decided to formally adopt both Emma and Sophie. The process will take a few months, but barring any complications, the girls will have a permanent home together. Marcus felt relief wash over him. That's great news. There's more. Emma wants to know if you'll come to the adoption hearing. She said it wouldn't be complete without her night there. Marcus smiled. Tell her I wouldn't miss it for anything. She also wants to know if you can bring some of your brothers in leather. Her words, not mine. Apparently, Sophie's been telling everyone at school about how a whole motorcycle club came to rescue her. I think we can arrange that, Marcus said. For months later, Marcus found himself standing in a Montana courtroom, surrounded by 20 members of the Ironclad Devils. They wore their best jeans and plain shirts, no vests, no patches, nothing that might prejudice the judge. But their presence was still commanding. These big, rough men who'd come to witness the official beginning of 2 little girls' new lives. Emma and Sophie sat at the front with Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, now officially their parents. When Emma saw Marcus and the brothers, her face lit up. She whispered something to Sophie, who turned around and waved enthusiastically. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, raised an eyebrow at the unusual audience but said nothing. She went through the legal proceedings, officially granting the adoption, making Emma and Sophie officially Emma and Sophie Johnson. When it was done, Emma ran to Marcus and hugged him tight. Sophie was right behind her. You came, Emma said. I promised I would, Marcus replied. And I keep my promises. The judge approached, her expression softening. You must be Marcus Donovan. I've read about what you did for these girls. That was incredibly brave. Just did what anyone should do, Your Honor, Marcus said. But most people don't, the judge observed. They look away. They decide it's not their problem. You looked, and you acted. That makes you extraordinary. She turned to the assembled bikers. All of you. What you did, coming together to rescue a child you'd never met, organizing a search across state lines, never giving up, that's remarkable. And it shows that courage and compassion aren't limited to any one group or type of person. Thank you, on behalf of this court and every child who benefits from people willing to stand up for them. Axel stepped forward and shook the judge's hand. Thank you, Your Honor. And if you ever need help again, with any child in danger, you know how to reach us. The judge smiled. I'll remember that. Outside the courthouse, Reporters were waiting. But this time, Marcus was ready. He'd prepared a statement with Axel and the brothers. 4 months ago, I stopped at a gas station in Carson's Corner. I was on my way to a funeral, focused on my own life, my own responsibilities. Then a little girl asked me for help, and everything changed. She reminded me that we're all responsible for each other, that the strongest among us have an obligation to protect the vulnerable. He looked at his brothers. The Ironclad Devils have decided to start a new initiative. We're calling it the Knights of the Road program. Every chapter will partner with local CPS offices, women's shelters, and child advocacy centers. We'll provide security, transportation, emergency response, whatever's needed to keep kids safe. Axel stepped forward. We're also establishing a national database to help combat child trafficking. Bikers travel everywhere, see everything. We're going to use that network to spot signs of trafficking and report them to authorities. No kid should have to go through what Emma and Sophie went through. The reporters erupted with questions, but Marcus just smiled and walked back to where Emma and Sophie stood with their new parents. Are you really going to help other kids like us? Emma asked. We're going to try, Marcus said, because you taught me something important. You taught me that asking for help isn't weakness, it's courage. And you taught me that one person can make a difference if they're willing to try. Sophie tugged on his hand. Will we see you again? Or are you going to ride away now? Marcus knelt down to their level. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. You're stuck with me. If that's okay with your parents. Mrs. Johnson smiled, tears in her eyes. More than okay. You'll always be part of this family. And so it was. Over the years that followed, Marcus became Uncle Marcus to Emma and Sophie. He attended their school plays and soccer games. He taught them how to change a tire and ride a motorcycle safely. He was there for first crushes and high school graduations. But more importantly, he and the Ironclad Devils kept their promise. The Knights of the Road program grew, spreading to over 50 chapters across 15 states. They helped rescue dozens of trafficked children, provided security for hundreds of domestic violence victims, and became an unexpected but powerful force for good in communities across America. Emma and Sophie grew into remarkable young women. Emma became a social worker, dedicating her life to helping children in crisis. Sophie became a prosecutor, specializing in child abuse and trafficking cases. Both of them credited Marcus with showing them that broken people could heal, that darkness could transform into light, and that the most unlikely heroes were often the ones who understood suffering best. On the 10th anniversary of that day at the gas station, the Ironclad Devils held a special ceremony. They unveiled a memorial plaque at the Carson's Corner gas station, now renovated and renamed Emma's Hope Station. The plaque read, "On this spot, a child found courage to ask for help, and a stranger found purpose in answering. May this place forever remind us that we are responsible for each other, that no act of kindness is too small, and that sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply stay when someone asks us not to leave." Marcus stood at the ceremony, now in his 50s, with more gray in his hair but the same fierce determination in his eyes. Emma and Sophie stood beside him, along with their families. Emma was married now with a baby daughter named Grace. The baby wore a bracelet of colorful beads, a gift from her mother. "I want to tell Grace about you one day," Emma said, holding the baby. "About how you stopped when no one else would. About how you kept your promise." Marcus looked at the baby, at this new generation that represented hope and healing. "You tell her that she comes from warriors, that her mother and aunt survived hell and came out stronger. That's the story that matters." Sophie hugged him tight. "We love you, Marcus. Thank you for being our knight." And Marcus Donovan, vice president of the Ironclad Devils, former convict, survivor of abuse, and the unlikely hero of two little girls' lives, smiled. "Thank you for giving me a reason to be one." 20 years after that fateful day at Carson's Corner, the world looked different. The story of Emma, Sophie, and the biker who saved them had become legend, inspiring countless acts of kindness and intervention. The Knights of the Road program had expanded internationally, with chapters in Canada, Mexico, and parts of Europe. They'd helped rescue over 2,000 children from trafficking situations, provided security for 10 000 plus domestic violence survivors, and become one of the most effective grassroots organizations fighting child abuse. Marcus retired from his position as vice president at age 67, but he never really left the work. He traveled the country, speaking at schools and community centers about recognizing signs of abuse, about the courage it takes to ask for help, about how ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Emma ran a nonprofit called The Knight's Promise, which trained everyday citizens in child safety and intervention. Her daughter Grace, now 20, was following in her footsteps, studying social work and dreaming of helping kids the way Marcus had helped her mother. Sophie served as a federal prosecutor, having put away some of the country's most notorious traffickers. She kept a picture on her desk, a scarred biker with two little girls hugging him tight, all of them smiling despite the tears on their faces. And the ironclad devils? They were no longer seen as outlaws or criminals. They were recognized as what they'd always been beneath the leather and tattoos. Men who'd found brotherhood, purpose, and redemption in standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Marcus passed away peacefully at age 73, surrounded by his found family. His funeral was attended by hundreds of bikers from across the country, but also by social workers, police officers, judges, and countless survivors he'd helped over the years. Emma and Sophie eulogized him, their voices strong despite their tears. He used to say he wasn't a hero, Emma told the crowd. He'd say he was just a guy who stopped at a gas station. But he was wrong. He was a knight. Not because he wore armor or carried a sword, but because when a scared little girl asked him to stay, he did. And that one choice changed everything. Sophie added, Marcus taught us that it's never too late to be better than you were, that your past doesn't define your future, and that the most powerful thing you can do is see someone who's invisible to everyone else. He saw us. He saw all of us. And because he did, we learned to see ourselves as worthy of love, of protection, of hope. They buried Marcus's ashes in 3 places, some at Tommy's grave in Billings, some scattered on Highway 87 near Carson's Corner, and some kept in urns by Emma and Sophie, so he'd always be close to the family he'd helped create. The ironclad devils rode in formation at the funeral, their engines rumbling a final salute. On the back of Marcus's old vest, which now hung in the club's place of honor, Tommy's patch still read, "Protect the innocent." And in a small town that had once turned its back on 2 suffering children, Emma's Hope Station continued to serve travelers day and night. Above the door, a new sign had been added. We see you. We believe you. We'll help you. Always. Because that's what Marcus Donovan had taught them. That's what Emma and Sophie had learned. And that's what they'd spend the rest of their lives passing on. One stranger, one promise, one choice to stay when it would have been easier to leave. And from that single moment, a legacy that would last for generations. In the end, that's what heroes do. They show up. They stay. They keep their promises. And they change the world, one person at a time. If you've been moved by this story, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, if someone asks you to stay, if someone needs help, if you see injustice and suffering, be the knight. Make the promise. Change the world. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person who cares enough to act.